DW Africa Link.
Zimbabwe is drowning in over $14 billion of debt. It's a burden that has shut it out of international credit markets, stalled development, and deepened its economic crisis. For years, the country has struggled to resolve its arrears with key leaders like the World Bank and the African Development Bank. But behind these huge figures lies a deeper question. Why has Zimbabwe remained stuck in a cycle of debt and distrust, despite repeated reform pledges and engagement efforts? At the heart of the issue, experts say it is not just money owed, it's about credibility, governance, and the political will to change. In this episode, we unpack the roots of Zimbabwe's debt crisis, what's been tried, what's failed, and what it will really take to turn the page. Stay tuned. My name is Josey Mahachi. Welcome to Africa Link, the podcast that connects you to the stories that matter from Africa.
Africa Link, every weekday here on DW.
In the previous episode, I mentioned being in Abidjan for the African Development Bank's annual meetings. A week packed with big moments, including the buzz around the election of the bank's new leader. But as a Zimbabwean, one thing caught my eye on the sidelines: a special session on Zimbabwe's debt arrears. You can bet I wasn't going to miss that. I made my way into the room, took in the speeches, and paid close attention to the presentation by Zimbabwe's finance minister. And let's just say I left with more questions than answers. So I did what any curious journalist would do. I followed up and secured an exclusive sit-down with none other than Professor Mthuli Ncube, the man at the helm of both finance and investment promotion. He joined me for an honest and insightful conversation. Let me share that with you. Honorable Minister Mthuli, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
How sustainable is the newly reintroduced Zimbabwe Gold ZiG currency? It's not new anymore. And what's the government doing differently this time to prevent further collapse?
Thanks very much. Since we introduced the ZiG, we're pleased that it has remained stable. We did, cause a depreciation in September last year, which was necessary. That was actually a policy decision. It was not the market decision. But since then, it's been very stable, and we're pleased with this. We have seen the figures when it comes to month-on-month inflation. Those have remained low. But of course, if you look at year-on-year inflation on the ZiG front, then the figures look high. But I can tell you that it is just a statistical effect. It's a base effect. But really, inflation is under control. What we had was the typical transmission of exchange rate volatility and weakness into inflation. So by having a stable ZiG, we've managed to break that transmission from the exchange rate to inflation. So what's different this time? When we launched the currency, we launched it as a structured currency with backed by gold in the main and other reserves, US dollars and other reserves. But all the other royalties that we also earn from other minerals other than gold are also converted into gold. So we've got a stable stock of reserves which is growing. We have a program for accumulating those reserves, and every time we're trying to match to see whether what we have in reserves is adequate to back the currency. And since the launch of the currency on the 4th of April last year, 2024, we've maintained reserves that more than match the ZiG in circulation. So we're confident that it will be stable. Recently, we got rid of this rule that those who are setting prices in the shops and wherever have to set them using the official rate. And now there's no reference to that. We've allowed that to operate freely. And again, it has contributed towards building confidence in the currency. So you can see we've applied a bouquet of measures, a portfolio of measures to make this work.
Now, speaking of confidence, what safeguards are in place to maintain public and investor confidence in the new currency? Because it looks like when it comes to Zimbabweans, there's mixed reactions.
Yeah. Well, look, the currency has been stable. I think really it is stability that will sell the currency, that will increase the confidence within the public eye on this currency. So by keeping it stable, As long as that stability endures, that's what will build confidence. Frankly, it has to be stability and nothing else.
Now let's go to the debt, the public debt and IMF engagement. Zimbabwe's external debt burden remains high, and talks with international lenders like the IMF and World Bank are ongoing, according to your presentation. But what progress has Zimbabwe made on debt restructuring, and how close is the country to re-engaging with international financial institutions?
So far we've made very good progress in terms of the reforms along the three key pillars, which is economic reforms, governance reforms, as well as then the land farmer compensation reforms. We now even issue title deeds in terms of the land pillar. So I feel that we've made a lot of progress. Even the introduction of the ZiG alone, which is stable, was part of the reforms that we undertook on the economic pillar. The abolition of the death penalty was a major achievement under the government's pillar. And the introduction of title deeds, as I said, is a major compensation of the farmers as per the Constitution. We're just following our constitutionalists, all those are key developments that have really supported this process. So now we're at a stage now where we are engaging with the IMF to embark on a staff monitored program. The IMF will be visiting the country next week. Hopefully then we will conclude and a meeting of minds, and then we start. We envisage a 9-month staff monitored program with quarterly assessments. So we hope to then complete that successfully. As we embark on the staff monitored program, we should also use that moment to look for what you call sponsors who can give us bridge financing. Because the way it works, it's a technical process that requires someone, typically one of the creditors, to give you literally a 24-hour loan. In fact, it's a 3-hour loan. Yeah.
How does that work?
It's amazing. So the way it works is currently we are in arrears, so we cannot access money from the soft window, which is the AIDA window, the World Bank, or the ADF window in the African Development Bank. We can't access. But the moment there's a sponsor who says, Zimbabwe, there is a $2.5 billion, go pay up the World Bank and the FDB for arrears, suddenly we are current. So the moment that country pays on our behalf, we become current, we're no longer in arrears, we can then access money from the soft window, and then we refund or pay back the lender of that bridge loan. The whole process takes about 3 hours. So all we need is a 3-hour loan. That's why it's important, therefore, to build trust through this reform agenda that we've been on. It's a trust-building exercise, but also it's real reforms at the same time. But the trust is key. That's what will unlock this bridge financing.
Speaking of reforms, even during your presentation, this word kept coming up, reforms. What economic or political reforms are being requested by these lenders, and is the government willing to implement them?
First of all, the lenders are not requesting reforms. We are the ones who feel these reforms are necessary. For instance, when we had the Zimbabwe dollar and it was wobbly, it was volatile, clearly something had to be done. So the introduction of the ZiG was our initiative. And in fact, when we introduced the ZiG, there were complaints in the global financial circles that maybe we're going back to the gold standard, and so forth and so forth. And that is not the case. It was our initiative, and we're challenging the world on how best to introduce a new currency under the circumstances. So these are our own reforms. The reforms we've taken in tightening things in the fiscus, value for money reforms that we've introduced. Most people don't even know that we've introduced a whole internal audit process, not in Treasury, not just in Treasury, but the entirety of government. That is new for any country, not even African country, for any country. So these are reforms that we ourselves feel are necessary for us to run things properly. And we've said to them, look at what we are doing. You can come and mark us on what we said we will do. So they act as the markers, but not the dictators. So I want to be clear in terms of how these reforms are taking place. We have been using the Mo Ibrahim index indicators, Transparency International indicators, and the well-justice projects indicators and so forth. And again, we're making progress. I mean, we tried, I think, 3 times before to remove the death penalty. It's not easy. Finally, we did it. You recall.
Some say that it's because Zimbabwe couldn't get someone to do that job, that particular job, that for years, that advert to get someone who does that job of just killing these prisoners was not there. Is that true?
No. but you remove a law because you can't find someone to hire. I know.
That I have to ask you because that's what people are saying.
It cannot be. It's because there was a willingness from the president and also cabinet. Remember, the president himself survived a death penalty. So I know that he feels very strongly. So to some of us, I don't believe in a death penalty, for example. So I'm clearly one of those who voted for that to be changed. And the entire cabinet was unanimous in supporting a change, a removal of that law. So it's nothing to do with the unavailability of leadership in executing on that mandate, I can assure you. And that's not easy. How do you get that through Parliament? And people have strong views against it. So these are not easy reforms that we're doing ourselves because we think it's good for Zimbabwe. You know, with a whistleblower, laws to protect whistleblowers, child protection bill, independence complaints, bill and so forth. We've done a lot. Yeah, and now if you look at how we've moved to the e-court system, case management system around our judiciary, the way we are building courts right around the country, make sure there's access to justice right across the country. We've done a lot, frankly, yeah. And at the risk of repeating, coming to the land issue, we are compensating the farmers who are under the global compensation deed agreement, $3.5 billion. Then we're also compensating the farmers who invested their money in the first place after 1980. These are the BIPA farmers, mainly from Europe, were being compensated. And then we're issuing title deeds to Zimbabweans who received offer letters and 99-year leases. These are major reforms that we've undertaken, on those 3 streams.
And there's also now triggering public backlash when it comes to government implementing new taxes and hiking existing ones to boost revenue. Your comment on that, Honourable Minister?
I think also there's some confusion. I think some citizens are mixing up regulatory fees.
And they feel it's too much, Yeah,
let me explain. The regulatory fees, which are not governed by the Minister of Finance, confusing that with taxes. Taxes are under the ambit of the Minister of Finance. So I've also noticed some of the reactions of late, but those are regulatory fees. It's nothing to do with the Minister of Finance, I must here say. So on taxes, I think you'll agree with me that we're at an inflection point globally. Overseas development assistance is collapsing fast. Yeah, the announcements from the U.S., if you look at HIV funding through PEPFAR and so forth, that has come down quite drastically. So what do you do? How to plug the gap in supporting those living with the scourge of HIV/AIDS? For example, you have to find the resources within the domestic economy. It's domestic resource mobilization. So what we've done, we think, is the right thing to do, which is we've been, we upped 2 years ago. We upped some sin taxes. That's what they are called, sin taxes, on alcohol and cigarettes. And then we also introduced taxes on fast foods, very small. I mean, 0.5%.
It might be small, Honourable Minister, but some people will feel like it's a lot.
No. It's small. Yeah, it's small. I think it's fair to say that. Let's look at pizza. Pizza is not exactly a poor woman or poor man's food. You'll agree with me. Tacos is not a poor man or poor woman's food. That's the middle class. And they too are using hospital facilities. So, most of these foods also tend to be linked to obesity and, and so forth. So we've got this bouquet of taxes which are meant to plug the gap that has been opened up by the collapse of ODA. So it's necessary. And every other country will be doing that. In fact, other countries are trying to learn from Zimbabwe now. Before I came to Abidjan, I was in Geneva. invited by the Global Fund for HIV, malaria and TB, and we're discussing these issues. And you can see other countries want to learn how Zimbabwe doing it. And we are on track to close the gap. That gap, we're on track to close the gap. So we have no choice but to have our citizens really pay for their own health. You cannot rely on taxpayers in other countries to pay for our own citizens. We cannot rely on German taxpayers to pay for Zimbabwe citizens. It cannot work like that. So part of the outcry from the public has to do with these regulatory or just fees in general. But I can assure you that these are not necessarily taxes coming to central government. These are fees that are being captured by agencies and regulatory agencies as well.
Now, there used to also be a mantra, Zimbabwe is open for business. Just to talk about that, is that still the case? And are there more investors coming into Zimbabwe right now, or still investors are shying away because of corruption, perceptions, policy inconsistency, and currency instability?
Oh, Zimbabwe is open for business, and investors are coming in. They are knocking on our doors every day. ZiG, Zimbabwe Investment Development Agency, has been busy approving various investors who are coming into the country. I must say that probably our most successful sector in terms of attracting investment has been mining. Why? Because you go where the mineral is. If we have lithium or rare earth minerals, when we have plenty of that, you come to Zimbabwe. So we've had a roaring success in terms of investment in the mining sector. And of course, we've sought to maximize benefit for the country in that sector by insisting on beneficiation. So we've said that those who are mining lithium, for example, must beneficiate to the level of lithium sulfate, lithium carbonate, so that we can maximize on returns for the country, on value for the country. And also the companies must also invest in corporate social responsibility, where 1% of their revenue is spent locally, building schools, maintaining roads, hospitals, clinics. And some of them are doing that. They're doing that. It's actually amazing. If you look at a company, for instance, like Zimplats, which is the platinum sector, they've done an incredible job in dealing with corporate social responsibility issues, providing housing, even developing a small town. I don't know if you've visited that town, Taff. It's amazing. Out of nowhere, there's a new town. But also in the way they've supported, it's a good example on how large companies can support SMEs, small to medium scale enterprises, by including them in the supply chain. In short, Zimbabwe is open for business. It will remain open for business.
Right. Now, as we wrap up our discussion, just to talk about the healthcare system and also rehabilitation centers, as we touched on a little bit on drugs in the country, what is the government doing, and are there also investors coming in for those industries?
In the health sector, we've been surprised. We've been able to tap into private sector funding. So we're currently building 30 polyclinics across the country, 3 per province. And then we're also building 6 district hospitals across the country. We are now at facility number 4. We raised 200 million from an offshore loan for those facilities. We're able to structure it through a guarantee provided by the South African Export Credit Guarantee. So we're able to do that. That's the only way we could access the loan. So what I'm saying is that we're using innovative means to access private sector capital to deliver on health infrastructure. So we're able to do that. And then you combine that now with these taxes that I mentioned earlier to support the actual delivery of services. This is how it ought to work. I'm thinking in the future, we could even get even more innovative and launch what you call a health bond. The way that would work is would take one of those sin taxes, for example, and quarantine it and ring fence it, and then issue a bond whose coupons, interest payments, will be serviced through that quarantined sin tax. So we're also exploring that. What that would allow us to do is to raise a lot of capital upfront for deployment into the sector, especially for capital projects. And then we service the loan over time. So as Zimbabwe, we stand ready to be as creative as possible to support our health sector and not just rely on simple taxation. But I've already outlined how we want to assist with that sector.
But you didn't touch on the rehabilitation centers.
Let me come to. We want to know basically about drug. We are building rehabilitation centers across the country to make sure these are available for those who are afflicted by drugs and substance abuse issues. We have a national task force that is chaired by the Minister of Defense. It's a cabinet task force to look into that issue. As I say that, we have these additional sin taxes that are being applied to that cause. It's not an easy thing. You asked me earlier, who's bringing in these drugs? It's part of the fight. We have to deal with how these drugs come into the country in the first place. So the issue of law enforcement is critical. What government will be doing as well is launching a whole drug enforcement agency, which is under the office of the President Cabinet, to really drive our strategy in dealing with this matter, looking after rehabilitation centers, law enforcement, the resources, the personnel, the strategy, everything, to make sure that we deal a lasting blow on this issue.
All right. Now, your parting words, if you can speak to Zimbabweans, specifically those who believe that your government is doing well, and to those also who feel like, no, Zimbabwean government right now is not doing well. We follow social media posts from different people. Just a minute or so for you to address directly Zimbabweans.
If you want to understand what Zimbabwe is all about, what Zimbabwean government is doing, it's always best to be on the ground. If you rely on social media, you'll get it wrong, because what sells on social media is negative. I've never known of a positive piece of news on anything that sells, that catches everyone's attention. It's always the negative part. So I can understand why we get all this negativity, because that's what sells. But to understand Zimbabwe, you need to be on the ground and see it for yourself. I mean, we have some amazing infrastructure projects that we've invested in. And I always think that if we had done this since 1980, the country would be a different country altogether. We've invested a lot in roads using our own resources, again using domestic resources. Just today, the President was inaugurating a very important bypass on the road from Osingo into Harare, the Trabablas bypass. It's an amazing piece of investment. Again, it's from resources directly coming from Treasury. The taxes that we were talking about earlier. The investment we've made in schools. The investment we've made in the power sector, 7 and 8, Kariba South. I don't know, when we last in Zimbabwe, have you seen the new airport in Harare? I must say new, because it really looks new. It's revamped, it's a world-class facility. So you have to be on the ground to appreciate what's happening in Zimbabwe. If you look at our devolution agenda, it has revolutionized some districts where there was no infrastructure before, schools, water facilities, clinics, and so forth. A lot has changed. We've done a lot in the First Republic since we came in 2018. But I encourage Zimbabweans to visit your own home, see it for yourself. Don't rely on social media.
All right. Now, those are your parting words. Don't rely on social media. There you go, Africa. I've been speaking to Professor Mthuli Ncube, Zimbabwe's Minister of Finance and Investment Promotion.
Africa is changing. Don't get left behind. Tune in to Africa Link.
Now, you heard the minister talk about reforms, right? That was brought up at the recently held Mo Ibrahim Governance Weekend. It was quite a twist. Zimbabwe newspaper publisher Trevor Ncube asked British Foreign Secretary David Lamu what it would take for Britain and Zimbabwe to normalize relations. Mo Ibrahim asked to respond to the question and told Ncube that Zimbabwe must get its act together first by stopping the abuse of the opposition. He said Zimbabwe has no right to ask for normalization in its current state. Tough response, isn't it? That's it for this edition of Africa Link. Remember, you are not just a listener, but a part of our community, and your engagement can shape the direction of our discussions. We value your insights and encourage you to share your thoughts with us on our Facebook page, DW Africa, as well as on our YouTube channel, DW Africa. You can find all of the Africa Link podcast episodes on Spotify and Apple, or wherever you listen to your podcasts from. This episode was co-produced and edited by Eddie Micah Jr. My name is Josey Mahachi. Thanks for listening. Until the next one, It's bye for now.
DW News.
Here are today's top news stories and why they matter. Pressure is mounting on Tanzanian authorities to investigate claims of torture and sexual abuse by Kenyan activist Boniface Mwangi and Uganda's Agatha Atuhaire. The duo said they were abducted, tortured and sexually assaulted by Tanzanian security officials. They had traveled to support opposition leader Tundu Lissu during his treason trial in Singadi last month. Here's DW's Naomi Jaseda with more on this story.
Authorities here in Tanzania have said that if activists Boniface Mwangi and Agatha Atuhaire were tortured, they should officially report it.